Old Port, I am doing very well. I had a good and busy day. Today was another session of Tomb of Annihilation, and the party, we didn't lose anyone. There was a very rough negotiation with a certain big NPC, and the party is now continuing on their way after that. It was a little tense. We got to welcome some new players to the table. I always love it when new players join our open public game on Thursdays. And yeah. You missed the player race? Could I get a short rundown? Yeah, Redcap, we're going to go over that information here as a reminder and a primer to help set us up for tonight's brainstorm. And aside from that, Old Port, I mean, it was a little rainy, which really had me down because I ended up receiving a new lawnmower. And unfortunately, there's the lawnmower, when I opened up the package, the battery casing had a crack and some scuffing on it. Yeah, so it's nothing that's vital. It's just it's like a shield that goes over the battery. But I don't know. I'm gonna call him tomorrow because, of course, it was like 10 minutes after the line closed, when I was unpacking everything after talking to customer service before that through Sam's Club, because the package that came in simply showed a lawnmower, and the invoice simply said that there was a lawnmower, and I ended up paying for a lawnmower blower combo. Both are battery powered, which is a nice upgrade because I was using a corded lawnmower before that. And so I called them and I'm like, so the invoice shows this. What's on your end? Because I don't want to open up the package just yet in case I need to return it and I don't, open it up and make a mess. So I'm chatting to the person, and of course there's no tracking info besides the door tag, but the door tag doesn't show if there's multiple shipments. And finally the rep just said, you know what, open it up and let's see what's in there. And I open up the box, and it looks like the blower parts were just kind of set in there. So I got both of them. I wonder if that's what led to the cracked housing, though. But I took the lawnmower out. I set it up. I was looking it over for any other scratches, dents, or flaws. Some little things here and there. I don't know if it's something. I'm not going to ask for heads to roll on the service phone line because it's not that person's fault, and I'm not that type of person. But I definitely want to talk to him and let him know that, the box came in kind of dinged up. I took pictures of the box. By the way, all this is stuff, maybe this is ingrained from owning a store and receiving a lot of boxes with valuable merchandise in it. But I took pictures of the box. I wasn't there to receive it. So, I took pictures of it when it was sitting on my porch. I brought it in. I took pictures of all the stuff I saw damaged in case I need to see it, at the time of opening. And I don't know. We'll find out what happens. But I'm happy that I got a new lawnmower. I'm just sad because it rained today and I couldn't even use it. And my lawn is going to need a good old-fashioned cutting. I've actually been helping set up a campaign fusion. One group was actually NPC to the other, and vice versa. The United Sessions start on Sunday. Oh, Old Port. If it is in your time frame or your capability, I would love to know how this kind of a thing is shaking out. Like, I don't know if it's like through an adventure diary, if you're going to keep that to translate the notes back and forth, or what's going on with that. But I'd love to hear how that happens, because what you're doing is kind of a mythical, like, people you read about it, in various forums or wherever online, Discord channels or the like. But it seems to be a rare thing that people have that happen where they end up bouncing off of each other. Little do they know that their greatest foes or their greatest allies, or both, their frenemies, is actually another group of player characters that are in turn reacting off of their decisions at the same time. Alright, so let's clear our data in case we need to do some rolling. Two DMs, one does the actual DMing. I'm doing the setup for set pieces like the fusion and that dead town I mentioned. Oh, gotcha, yeah. Did you decide on carrion crawlers? Or did you want to go someplace else with that? So Redcap, the concept here, if we go, well, so this is the frontier. We're not going to worry about this just yet. What ended up happening with these people, in one of the areas we were generating last week, we ended up with a forest and a swamp. And we're saying, okay, so this is what's going on. And then we skipped down to a totem pole and an intact obelisk, because I wasn't worrying. At the time, we weren't expecting there to be a society of any kind. And so we're trying to, we're throwing out ideas, fleshing stuff out. The weird locale, a battlefield where lingering fog occasionally assumes humanoid forms. And we stopped there and said, you know what? That is an interesting idea. What if we actually have stumbled across a native race to this region? And so maybe we can actually make a society around here. And from there, we went through the settlement concept, though we split our roles between the forest people and the swamp people. And if you take a look at the region we ended up manufacturing, right? So it's here with a we have a swamp and a forest. So boop-a-doop. There's our two regions. We kind of split them here. And then there's another region we developed that's in the middle, because it seemed to make sense as this medium from one to the next. In fact, all the regions we manufactured are represented on the map. And so what I want to focus on through all this with the race that we went on to develop, and by the way, it's on YouTube as well. If you want to see the creation videos we do for our workshops, Shukan, hey Maddie, did Diadems ever inform you that me and him made a trade? Yes, Shukan. I need to repost your all's holdings that show those notes. I'm going for a swarm, definitely going crawler. Ah, excellent, old port. In fact, ooh, is this link even still active? Yeah, it is. It looks like it might still take it, because I was doing some stuff to change up to make the YouTube and the YouTubes consistent with the Twitches. And if it doesn't work, let me know, and I'll tend to it. So, we went through this, and eventually we went to to a workshop where we're making a playable race, and we made some placeholders, but we were really focused on, what do we want to do for the race? So we're thinking about their society. How do they look? What do they do? What is the core that both these societies share? And then for the Swamp Whispers and the Forest Whispers, how do they differentiate? What makes them them? And so we filled in all of this data, and of course we're gonna reference this too over the course of things. Yeah, Ivalon is a great mentor, and I'm glad that he was able to help you out, Black Wolf. Okay, Shukan. If you want me to clear your minis, I can try taking them to the store tomorrow and see if I can get them out Friday or Saturday for you. All right. Anyway, we have a lot of documents. I don't know. This might look all cluttered, and you're like, come on, get on with it. Let's see some action, right? Let's develop this swamp society, and I'm with you on this. Now, what we did to take another step away, we made this frontier town, which is not represented on this map, but we placed it right here, and so this area is a lot more detailed than what you're seeing on this, 100,000 foot view of the region. There's no real scale. We're playing around with that. And then we zoomed in and we gave it its own monuments. We gave it its own considerations. In fact, we even said, and this actually kind of goes into the map that we made earlier, although we didn't necessarily say it just yet, was that we made a monastery that was a part of the cliff face of this glacier here. And it had a whole awesome, like, kind of cinematic build-up. We did some imaginative storytelling, you know, close your eyes and here's the scene, and can you see this? And how does this function and trade across the lake with the frontier people? And the frontier people are on the frontier of what? What was happening elsewhere? It was an awesome session. McGruber, hello to you. McGruber, did your minis arrive? Excellent, excellent. Now you just need one more. Uno más. This was the settlement that we ended up creating for the frontier town. You know, we could reference this if we really, really want to. Though we don't really have to for the swamp. Because this is going to be its own thing. So first things first, before we get to drawing, I want to take some of the information that we have already generated. That we've already generated for this area. And bring it over to a more constant. So instead of just talking about the region, right? The region has a swamp, and the region has a forest. And this is a very, like a, whatever, 10,000 foot view. I want to zoom in as we go through this process and flesh out maybe the main island, the capital, or just sort of show what any of the islands that are swirling around on this swamp, what any of them could look like, and what their culture could be united. There might be small differences as these, clumps of moss and trees and whatever kind of do a slow circling drain with the tides going in and out and the water, and, you know, the water from the glacier kind of pooling through and helping to push. The forces are coming up this way, the water's going down this way, and we have this Coriolis effect, which, by the way, could be telling, because if it's going the other way, in which hemisphere are we, right? So for the terrain types, we know for certain that we're talking swamp. Swampo. This is Swampo. Do we want to put in a second? We can. Nothing's stopping us. It could open up some ideas, but we'll get to that. Let's take the data over first, and then we'll crack open our books and cast the bones into the augury dish and read them from there. Oh, pardon me. That was rude. My group is all back in town, and we can pick up our Horde of the Dragon Queen campaign that I'm running. Ooh, and you have the miniatures to help out with that. Well, I mean, if we want to interpret it in another way, or call the swamp a quagmire, you need a blue dragon. Well, I know we've cracked open a couple of those when we had Tyranny of Dragons. You'd have to talk to maybe some other people in the community and see if they're willing to trade or ship it out to you, though. The form of government that we generated was an oligarchy. So this is a small cluster of rulers that get together and make decisions. And that could work out, especially, you know, because some of these details maybe subconsciously bled through, but the oligarchy could very well be each of the islands that are formed might have their own chieftain. And they send boats to the main island that just sort of, you know, kind of circles the drain here, right in the middle. And so we could be generating like the capital of the swamp area here. But what happens here is pretty indicative of what you see happening on the other islands that are, you know, sometimes they're thrown out to sea, before they kind of bounce around and kind of come back in, or some don't. They just drift off. They could be abandoned, and people kind of have to come back and merge islands. But we can have a lot of fun with this. So we have an oligarchy, and we know that the swamp people, for one of their monuments, had a totem pole. So we're going to put that here, but we can generate more. Another monument in a weird locale. So we're going to do that with a D20. So we have a 20 and a 2. I'm going to put these as placeholders, and then we'll come back and understand what that means in just a little bit. Now, for the races, I mean, it seems obvious we have whispers, and it seems to be fairly exclusive to that end. Now, are they the only sentient race in these here parts? Maybe. If we wanted to come up with something, I don't know, maybe a monstrous race that lives here. You know, lizard folk. I mean, that's if will-o-wisp people aren't monstrous. You know, we wanted to roll lizard folk or something. We could always crack open. Volo's Guide to Monsters and roll something up there, and give another sentient population, or treat it maybe as sentient but as very primitive, even compared to the nomads. We could talk about other things. So for sure we have. And I don't really have a fancy name for them here, but swamp whispers. If we really wanted to split it and put forest whispers, right? Because some could live here as well. There are some slight differences. The relations between the two, we actually rolled harmony for both, and that works out. So they get along. They get along well, especially after they just had a civil war. Now, the ruler status of the swamp people is respected, fair, and just. And so we can think about this in the swamp society. What does this leader, or it says the ruler status like it's singular, this could end up just being... this could end up being the council is seen broadly as respected, fair, and just. We could even see this as maybe there's a council and they all get together and elect sort of an executive officer who then enacts what the council comes up with. If any of you live in a city, kind of like what I have here, where you have city commissioners and they are elected representatives of the people, but after a bill is passed or, you know, a notion carries forward, there is a city manager that has been hired by the city and given executive powers, not legislative powers, to then enact the will of the commissioners who are then elected by the people. And so we could end up having that. So the oligarchy gets together, they discuss what's good for the swamp, and then they maybe have hired someone that will enact it. But we'll get to that in just a little bit here as we're making this swamp society. So a notable trait about the swamp is that it is destitute, run down. Now, all of this you can find in the Dungeon Master's Guide. As you can see in the guide that we use here, I put these pages so you can reference this yourself. And so we want to keep this in mind. Is it destitute and run down because perhaps after this war we were discussing, things were damaged? Or does it look destitute and run down because you're building in a swamp? You know, you don't have permanent stone fixture. You might have stone. You're not going to build a castle in the swamp. Monty Python covered that very well. And so, honestly, this could just look destitute or run down. Lots of vines growing on stuff. The water, it soaks into everything. And you have to replace your thatched roofs often due to storms or rot or whatever. Sorry, I fell behind on chat here. D&M's is saying giggity. McGruber says, if you haven't recently, could you kind of explain the map so I know what's going on? Those are floating islands, are they? Or some of them? At least some of them are, Zuler Pie. Volars and Xanathars is a great combination for PCs. There is a lot of information you can get there. There are many options. Boxsters? I don't know what you mean by Boxsters, Black Wolf. McGruber's asking, do you recommend using rolls and randomness to generate citizens or zones, or just more so for writer's block? Both. I mean, it's your story. You can come up with whatever you want. I use random rolls because I enjoy the challenge of connecting the ideas and trusting myself and you all to find ways to come up, even if we have a weird, convoluted mix of something. How can this exist? Let's think about it. Let's think critically. So it can break writer's block. In fact, a lot of the stuff that I do, I hope provides inspiration for you all in some way, whether it's today, it's next month, it's next year. I hope that you can draw something from this and learn, well, if in doubt, like, I really need to come up with, I really got to come up with the name of something. We've done all sorts of naming conventions. We've done, we're talking culture. We can talk architecture based on this. The random rolls just sort of shake things up and get you to think in a way that that's fresh, right? If you have writer's block, it's usually because you're trying to apply the same things that you know. And of course, if you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, that's the definition of insanity. And so let the dice rolls and the charts just help shake up your thinking, challenge your thinking, take you out of your comfort zone. Instead of swamp whispers, they could be called bog whispers and be referred to as boxsters. Oh, okay. Thank you for clarifying that, Black Wolf. Thank you. As for the map, I'll bring up the map, McGruber, and we'll discuss the way that the region is playing and what's happening on that map here in just a little bit. I want to get this information transferred over and talk about the swamp specifically first, and then we can put it in its place on the map. Ooh, an omelet. Did you put any toppings in there? Ham, cheese, mushrooms, onions, peppers, salsa. All this and more. Chives? Okay. Okay. All of the above? Yeah, Redcap. Now, this place is known for its strong drink. Remember, these are all prompts that you can roll in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I'll bring that up here in a second. Looks like I forgot to open it up before the broadcast. But all of these are charts that give you things to think about. We just rolled it prior, and now we're taking the information over so we can come up with this society. And as we map things out, as we're considering options, we can make our links stronger and stronger. The current calamity is that there is a prophecy of doom. A town name was offered last week as well, called Frogenthier. Maybe this is the capital that we're developing. The other islands might have their own names as well. There is a religious building that is a temple to a good or neutral deity. And let's just go odds or evens. Odds is good, evens is neutral. Odds. Temple to a good deity. There's a tavern name called the Golden Lamb. And that is, that's the place where anyone who's anyone goes to get a drink or to eat. And it is also a gambling den. You went to a nice South African restaurant for dinner and had king clip for the first time, and it's now my favorite dish. What is that, McGruber? I can honestly say I didn't... I guess it makes sense. I've never heard of South African food, though. Can you describe it broadly or what that dish is specifically? Got a piece of sharp cheddar and rolled it up in a piece of deli roast beef. Ooh, that does sound good. Frogenthier is a good name. I've been I have been there for both laziness and for lack of funds. Old Port Media says Prophecy of Doom sounds like a swamp serial killer putting the good people or drunkards out of their deaths. We can consider that. Although it might be referring more to the glacier. Maybe that's what ends up breaking these people out to go meet the frontier town. And of course, conveniently, as our player characters. Because remember, we're role-playing as dungeon masters. We're making an adventuring environment. If there's a Prophecy of Doom, it calls for a Prophet of Doom. Ah, Lazy Monkey's looking into things. This is generating an NPC. Oh, Sheeps. It's Oh, Sheeps. Hey, welcome. If the swamp were to dry up, what would qualify as Doom? Would it not? That could be as well, yeah. Kingclip is a type of whitefish, says Old Port Media. It's in the family of fish that are more similar to eels. The fish itself was very flaky and a little sweet. It was topped with a nutty sauce and chopped scallops. Ooh, that does sound really good. My goodness. Doing very well, thank you, O'Sheeps. It's been a fun day. All right, now let me open up my books. All right, so we're looking here, and we could say that there's forest or mountain that could very easily be a part of this, and we could just drop that in there if we want to open ourselves up instead to a little bit of randomness. Then we can always roll for the other terrain type. Now, it's an arbitrary choice that I recommend 2 terrain types, so you get some kind of interaction. At least one interaction of something or another. Doesn't mean you can't have a city that is completely in grasslands. Absolutely fine. Plains or sort of bowling greens as far as the eye can see. Nothing wrong with that. For us doing these mental prompts, though, I want to try and force some kind of interaction. And an excellent way that you can go about that is if we look at page 68. Of the player's handbook, you see that there are 8 biomes that druids can draw, Circle of the Land druids can draw their magic from. And there's also 8 biomes that rangers have some specialty skills in tracking through. With this kind of repetition, then, why don't we apply the biomes that exist in the player's handbook so that should a player want to play here, and if they have a druid or a ranger, you can describe the environment in that way. So let's roll a d8. We already know that there's swamp and predominantly swamp, but maybe there's a splash. What's a hint of some other feature that can exist? And let's let that ignite our imaginations as we're doing this. 1. Arctic. Lazy Monkey, you left something in the car. I don't want to walk back out there. Well, you are a lazy monkey, so I completely understand. McGruber says, I just finished the 1/5 of my campaign that I'm creating. Took me about 2 weeks, give or take, but I'm feeling accomplished. Great. And if you ever need motivation or energy or ideas, McGruber, you know you can come to us for it, and we'll help you out. How do you know it's 1/5? It's hard to actually end one. I had some really good salsa today. Deli habanero hot salsa. Smelled delicious and tasted delicious. Ooh, that does sound good, Black Wolf. By grasslands, do you mean green or savanna? Yeah. Yes, to answer that modal question. It'd be a lot to type out, but if you want, I can explain it in Discord. Yeah, please do. McGruber, share it, and let us and them read it. Yeah, if we wanted to say mountain, again, I said we could force it, but think of it this way. We rolled Arctic, and what Arctic has meant so far in the regional map is this large glacier that exists here. Now, this isn't inherently a part of the glacier. A lot of cold water probably does come through here. A lot of cold water from the glacier, probably some warmer waters from the sea. Makes for a very misty, foggy swamp. What's to say, then, that we don't change this central island? In fact, maybe this one's fixed because it's frozen. And what if this island holds a crystal similar to the monastery from the interaction with the frontier town? And if this is keeping the face of the glacier cold here, so that the monastery doesn't melt or get destroyed in some way as the glacier's moving, what's to say then perhaps on this capital island that there's not a similar sort of like a permafrost crystal? And maybe that's what's causing this thing to not spin, to be fixed, because it's sort of buried and it's frozen deeply to roots or the swamp bed, something along those lines. So there's very cold water that swirls, that can swirl around here. I think, mountain could work, forest could work, grasslands could work. To have a grassy swamp, it's a water meadow. There's other terms that we can use for it. An estuary, some kind of a salt or it would be a freshwater marsh in this case. So we could mix that very easily. But with this prompt, at least the area that we're making has this Arctic chill. Let's bring it together. And now as DMs, we can ask ourselves, so if we have a crystal here and a crystal here, does that mean there are others? There doesn't have to be. What happens if the two crystals are somehow brought together? What happens if there's a third one over here? Because we're going to work on the Forest Society tomorrow. What if there's one out in the mushrooms or something? We're the DMs, we'll figure it out, but these are excellent prompts to get us to think. Under your creations, if you want, but it might be a little bit better to drop it in the RP workshop. So if you have questions on it or people want to offer suggestions, that would be a very good place to have that discussion. Hey, crowdfunded, welcome. There is a glacier to the north. Yes, Zulurpai, or Iprolux, if that is your real name. What if the crystals could be brought back to the glacier to stop its melting? Well, it's, from what we have been putting together, Shukan, the glacier isn't really at risk of melting because it's still expanding. And that seems to be the overarching threat, is that this glacier continues to grow. It melts because, that's the nature of it, but it does seem to continue to grow. The streams, well, I still have internet. Jeez. If you all weren't here last night, my ISP had maintenance, and so the stream was cut short. Trust a Flump wiggles in and stench sprays us. Ah! I trust. Last night ended poorly. Don't confuse you with your nerdy twin. Hey, it's Iprolux, everyone. Say hi to Iprolux. Oh, okay, Shukan, no problem. Hey, we got some wheeling and dealing going on in chat here. I'm always dizzle to trizzle. All right, so we've challenged ourselves to think, okay, how can we work Arctic? And I think we have a really this is building our story piece by piece, and the story is a sandbox, but it's showing that things happen in the world, things exist in the world. There's interactions. You know, what could it mean if the crystals are brought together? What could it mean, if it was one stolen, and maybe that was the cause of the Civil War, and it only ended after, big battles of attrition, and the Whispers were going to die until one side said, you know what, I guess you don't have our stuff, or we'll just have to live without our crystal, but we would rather live, so we give up. Now all of a sudden we might have our seed for our conflict. And then, of course, we look over at the monastery built into the face of the glacier, and wouldn't you know it, those are the rascals that took the other Arctic crystal in order to keep the face of their monastery maybe cosmetically or structurally sound. Who let Iprolux into chat? That is to say, Ziller Pie. Yeah, Redcap, if you want to trade, you can look at each other's pull lists, and if you trade minis, just let me know. Now, let's go to our Dungeon Master's Guide, page 108. And we know that there's a totem pole. So there's going to be a totem pole of some importance that's going to be located in this society. What does it mean? What does it do? Is it spiritual? Is it secular in some way? And it's public art. We can consider all manner of ways that this totem pole could be important. Though I want to make sure that we have another monument and something weird. What is something weird going on here? Because did we get a something weird about? Okay, no, because the something weird was regional, and that was where we got the racial idea. Okay. So we rolled a 20 on monument number 2, and this is another totem pole. So we can ask ourselves, do we want 2 totem poles, which is perfectly fine? And if so, what do they mean? This goes back to the beginning of last week, where we said, let's come up with some fascinating ideas, right? What would happen if a volcano just constantly spewed ash and smoke? What would happen if the sand content was very high in iron? And then we have these lightning strikes building these sort of electromagnetic, deposits, fumaroles. And so what if, in a world, we had a meteor strike here? What if this is a very charged location magnetically? Or if it's not, like you can't wear metal here or something like that. What if there's enough of a residual charge? We rolled 2 totem poles. And what else do we call poles? Right? The ends of a magnet. What if this island, in order to stay steady, actually has like a north and a south pole that keep it aligned with a north and south pole here? Some like in the ruptured rock from the meteor strike. What if our poles are just that? You know, they're these giant shards of metal that help keep the central island centralized, you know, intact. I may check back later. Be good, X. Yeah, Iprolux is Zulurpai's, I don't know, evil twin, good twin, neutral twin. So this could be a very interesting concept. Now, what is our weird locale? Again, this is arbitrary. I like 3 things. What are 3 notable things about an area? Whether it's a town, it's a county, it's a state, or it's a country, or an equivalent, you know, a province or a parish or whatever. Our weird locale we rolled up is a 2. And what does that mean? Oh, there's a dead magic zone, similar to an anti-magic field. All right, now we have to ask ourselves, what is creating the dead magic zone? Now, we did come up with we called it the mage staff fern, that sort of ate magic. Could this have to do with the totem poles? Because maybe this is a place of peace. They wanted to take magic off the table so that negotiations could be trusted. What if the totem poles, whether through magnetism or just magic itself, whether it's spirit, you know, the divine, channeling spiritual manifestations or something. Maybe there's 2 great totem poles and a bunch of smaller ones that like face out to the swamp to keep all the bad juju away, the bad mojo. That could end up being why magic does not work on this island. And by the way, you want to challenge your players. Watch what they do in a wild magic zone or an anti-magic zone. Because there's not that many non-magical classes and subclasses in D&D. So we're having all kinds of fun prompts with this. Maybe the totem poles are the things that generate magic, and the zone is where they don't reach. Then we can consider that and incorporate that into our culture. All right, and so we have this other stuff here that's going on. We can call this settlement concept. We could just rename this to be Frogenthier, since that was what was offered last week as the name for this place. Input is appreciated. Yeah, so if all of you can take a look, McGruber is hoping for some input on the campaign notes that he's creating. So if you're on our Discord, could you please go and take a look and give him some notes? And McGruber, when I have the opportunity to, I'll take a look and give you feedback as well. RPG Workshop, gotcha. All right, so if we come down here, let's start throwing out some ideas. We have an oligarchy, and so maybe maybe this is formed. Leaders from each of the other islands send. Well, I guess are chosen to gather on the central one in order to make policy and mete out justice to criminals. How about this? As a show of good faith, a representative of the Forest Whispers also holds a seat on the council. And another is asked to conduct the business that the oligarchy requests. So by doing this, in the wake of this civil war, right, there's harmony. We have this representation, not from people who live in the swamp, but there's at least someone who is representing the neighbors. And so the forest folk might even do the same in reciprocity. That would be kind of like, if you have a county, if you have county commissioners, which I imagine most, or if all of you have, I don't know, there's, oh, I'm sorry, pardon me. You have two, or let's make it an even number for easy math. There's 4 people elected from your county to be county leaders. And you then have someone from a neighboring county that sits on your county board, so that there is, you have a neighbor that has a say in what you're doing. Because of course you have a county representative in the neighbors decision making too, to try and communicate and to say this is what's happening and to hold each other accountable. Maybe that's what these people have done in the wake of this civil war. That way, news and information reaches the swamp folk, and it will make them more thoughtful, which is who these people are. They are strong, but they're also strong up here with either intelligence or wisdom. Oh, shoot, I'm sorry, I gotta scoot this over. Doop, doop, doop. There we go. Yeah, I heard you needed swamp people, and Orcs Make Beautiful Lovers shows up. Yes, this was the main tavern that we generated last week that we carried over here. Hey, Azrael! Cacaw and cat butt to you as well. Now let's see. The central island is the capital of the region and has been made into a neutral meeting ground because of its relatively static nature, due in part to the so the townsfolk might call it something else for the frontier town, or technically the monastery. Maybe this is called due in part to the maybe something just nice and simple. The Ice Wall Glacier. Hey, if you want to come up with another name too, then that's fine. This is a placeholder. Shard that is keeping it frozen in place. As well, 2 major totem poles work to create an anti-magic area on the island. And maybe with the side note of unless you stand within a certain range of them. If we don't like it, well, whatever, we'll just delete it. You're here for a moment before passing out. I still appreciate taking the time to stop by and say hi, orcs. Coffee Cat's here. Hi, Coffee Cat. Can you tell my zombie beholder I love it and I'll PM you the shipping info? Yes, of course, orcs. I can pass that along before passing it along to you. It's 567 orcs don't make beautiful lovers circle. Seriously, they don't. Oh, gosh. And then you say you're not in Laurel. Yeah, maybe it's something where you have to, or maybe for the things that are there, you know, you have to attune to one of the pieces of the totem pole, and that could allow magic. But perhaps if this is the neutral meeting ground area, you know, in order to trust each other, you have to take magic off the table, because you're not mind manipulating other people that way. Or threatening, you know, I'm going to cast a fireball if you don't do what I want. That kind of a thing. And so, now the totem poles don't have to do this, because again, the totem poles, if we didn't want it to be frozen by ice, we could say that it was locked in magnetically, and there's just a strong magnetic field. You know, maybe you actually do, like Principal Skinner, get Aurora Borealis localized right here in our corner or kitchen of this region. Well, oh sheeps, it can happen. We have 2 races that focus on wisdom and intelligence. Your Rootin' Tootin' Scootin' know that they understand magic exists of different varieties. Perhaps the gods of this culture are based on natural phenomena such as floods, rain, the sun, the moon. The faith is based on a fallen star that we were thinking was a comet. Do I have a copy of my own map with the sections marked? The map is on Discord. I uploaded the region map last week. Well, I guess it was technically the beginning of this week. With the videos and other content that we created last week. So the ruler's status, is the ruler, this selected person, is the ruler considered to be the oligarchy? Or is it altogether as the government? Well, they're still respected, fair, and just. The noble trait, it's destitute or run down, but they might be living in pole houses. right? Rising, even on the islands where you could probably walk, there might be a lot of creepy crawlies. There could be a lot of, water that comes and goes, even in the middle of the island where it might be, supposedly the toughest and most shorn up. And so you have a lot of stuff that looks ramshackle because the swamp is constantly eating, dead vegetation and the like. So it needs constant repair and all this other stuff. And that's why it's there. Now, what it's known for, its strong drink. This could be a soda. I think last week, Crowdfunded said it would be like a root beer. Or a sarsaparilla. This is a quick question. Are you making this swamp a tropical swamp with rivers, a bog swamp with the coldness, or a southern swamp with moist? I guess the swamp that we have made is fed by glacial waters as well as by fresh water, or maybe slightly brackish. But we have the sea. It's a salt sea. It passes through this mushroom mangrove forest, and then the mushrooms are desalinators. So they extract the salt, leaving kind of brackish water, and ultimately, from where all the fresh water from the glacial melt is coming out, and then we have the brackish water coming in through the mushrooms, we actually have a freshwater coast to the sea and the swamp. And then, so of course, the swamp and the sea end up sort of merging on the border here. Artax died in a bog, never forget, says Crowdfunded. We got us a bog. Sarsaparilla. Sheeps, that's sarsaparilla. You forgot the R. Sarsaparilla. Now, sheeps, y'all gotta be tolerant of the silent R, because if you speak badly about it, I'm gonna have you wash your mouth out with soap, young lady. I'm gonna break out the Photoshop skills and try and make a more graphic map for you. I don't know which areas are which. Well, in color-coded, we have a swamp, we have our mountains. This is like a shattered area here. This is more like Appalachian Mountains here, from where the comet kind of skidded through, creating this canyon. We have, some forest, some grasslands here, the glacier, all the tunnels of the wind and everything rushing through it. Some igneous rocks that are being pushed along by the glacier. And then, of course, we have our sea out here. And this is where, we have this this mushroom forest that's desalinating the water. So we have a temple to a good deity that's here, and we could name this temple, we could name this faith. The faith revolves around the falling star that led the nomads here originally. The swamp take on it is pragmatic and understands that while it changed them and the area around it, it is a force to be respected and understood. It happened. yet we're still here. The magic or radiation, whatever, bleeding off of it ended up having these mutagenic effects that turned these natives or these nomads that were following the predictions of this falling star to the region into these sort of will-o-wisp people that have the floating cores and the kind of the gelatinous bodies. It centers around change, light, and acceptance of one's circumstances, as well as an appreciation for nature and its forces. Now, what that could mean, especially because our swamp folk have a racial modifier to wisdom, is we are looking that we have more clerics coming out of here, maybe monks themselves, some druids, and we're able to say, well, if you want to play this whispered character, this is not just the mechanics, this is the culture that you're coming from. You are drawing on this wisdom, you're drawing on this knowledge and this faith that we are different than who we were, and who we are or who we were aren't as important as who we are today. There's a pragmatic sense of you don't have to fight it, you don't have to let things happen. And they see it as more of this just kind of loosey-goosey, go with it, the prophecy will play out. Now there's this prophecy of doom we got to discuss as well, but just let it roll. In fact, that could even be why one of the big notable places is a gambling den. Just whatever happens, happens. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. Turns out the falling star was just an illusion. Oh, I'll be having some queso during the break here, coming up shortly, oh sheeps. Or they find a baby in the meteor and it's the backstory of one of your PCs. Yes, we could have a star baby. If you want a star baby, and as a DM, talk to your PCs or make it an NPC. And so if we look at this, we probably have, there might be a druidic order. There is probably going to be a, the monks out of here could be the. We could go Way of Shadow, honestly, because they have the appreciation of light, and yet this is a clandestine clan that operates in the shadow, as something that's maybe secret agents kind of a thing, the equivalent of ninjas, which is what the Way of Shadow monks are supposed to be, ninjas or shadow dancers. And so we have the light domain. We can have a nature domain cleric. We can have a druid, and in particular a monk discipline, probably Way of Shadow, that are all thematically and culturally appropriate to what we have here. Hello, Demon Lord Nem. Oh, yes, Azrael. Monks. Pie Jesu Domine, dona eis requiem. Dona eis requiem. Sempiter. Oh, so, shoot, hang on. Sempiternem. Sempiternem. Thwack. I'm trying to remember the cadence from Monty Python. On the fly, I hope I did well. I did right by your quote there, Azrael. Catching up, lizard folks. They're the only race I like that's not dwarves. You'll be playing your lizard folk druid of the swamp tomorrow. Ooh. Oh, cool. Yeah. On the count of three. On the count of three, what? I mean, I see a 3. Can I get a 2? Followed by a 1? In my Horde of the Dragon Queen campaign, a player is Zorquan, who was punished by Asgoreth and sent to live a full life as a mortal dragonborn. But his character doesn't technically know that. Can you or may you? Thank you, O'Sheeps. Bobicus, a Whisper is a new race that we created through the random prompts and storytelling we did last week. And so now we're making a society of the swamp variety of Whispers. What are some other tenets of the culture, of the faith that we have here? You know, we can go through, and if we want to break it down by class, we could make the list and, go clerics, mostly X, Y, or Z. Rangers, of course, that are swamp or Arctic trained. Druids of one or the other. In fact, maybe Circle of the Land. This place doesn't really produce Circle of the Land druids. Maybe it's more because they focus on the changing of things. It's more Circle of the Moon druids, if we're just sticking to core concepts. If you want to expand that into Xanathars or other things, like Ravnica has the Circle of Spores. If you think that a lot of mushrooms grow here, or a lot of algae and other things, very primitive life like that, then maybe call it the Circle of Algae Druids, and you re-flavor it a little bit, and we go from there. But this is another technique you can use. Monks, so maybe this is the Way of Shadow that really come out of here. And we can break it down by class, because we already know the race that exists here. If we want, we could even put a primer as a DM. If we're trying to put this together to give to our players, you may be from here if you're this background because, right? If you are an urchin, what happened that you grew up in these soggy streets? If you are an outlander in this region, what would that imply for you? Oh, pardon me. Sorry about that, everyone. Guten Morgen. How's everyone this morning? Yes, good morning to you, Delcorin. So is this an agricultural society or hunter-gatherer? We haven't really decided. All we know is that there is a swamp that has most of the islands kind of swirl around because of the glacial rivers that pour into it. And then, of course, we have our desalinated seawater along the coast that the forces of tides are pushing up. And so we have these rotating islands around this central one that's pretty well frozen in place. And so this is the capital. We could have hunting and gathering in the swamp. That would be fairly easy to do, fishing and the like. And if we want some of the islands, all the islands could engage in agriculture, where they're growing, rice and okra and all of the other things that you need for a good jambalaya. Oh, Red Cap, I hope it's nothing too bad, just like an old sunburn going away. How might a charlatan fit into this society? Well, it could depend on the con. Remember that the main, like the main tavern, like the best tavern in the capital, is a gambling den. And so being able to be a bit of a con artist could very well play into that. And if you want to get super specific, because if you look at things like backgrounds in chapter 4, let's go to charlatan. There are 6 different scams that are recommended. I cheat at games of chance. Well, there's definitely games of chance. I shave coins or forge documents. That depends. Are these people, do they have a coin-based economy? or is it bartering or something else? Or again, it says forged documents. That could be important. I insinuate myself into people's lives to prey on their weakness and secure their fortunes. Culturally, what would a fortune be? Would it be owning a rice paddy? Would it be owning some livestock to kind of absorb, as we discussed the physical characteristics of whispers and how they eat? I put on new identities like clothes. You could, in a society where people can look like however they want, and yet they're able to read each other's cores. This could be an extremely useful and maybe even a very dangerous talent, is to be able to convince someone you are not who you are, and not just because of the body you wear over your core, but by fluctuating your core differently. So you're speaking with an accent or whatever. I run sleight of hand cons on street corners. Something like that could happen, just in its own interesting fashion. Or I convince people that worthless junk is worth their hard-earned money. I mean, that's one of the classics. So a charlatan could work in this society very well. Delcorin says better okra than avocado. I like okra. I like the crunch and the fact you also get that little bit of slime. Okra is amazing. I don't know if it's better than avocado, though. Sheep says okra is way better than avocado. Well, then when are we going to get okra on toast? So I like the idea of a pastoral society that raises herbivores that eat a special kind of swamp grass. Yeah, okra is great for thickening a roux. Yes, Redcap. When the hippies figure out how amazing it is. Fried okra, you got it, crowdfunded. Avocado has more uses, but I like it less than okra alone. Yep, get some gumbo. Yeah, deep fried okra is decent, especially if it still has that kind of slime to it, despite being fried. Did we ever settle on the reproduction of the whisper race? There could be some interesting ideas. Could there be different subspecies of whispers? We came up with two subraces. We have the forest people and the swamp people. I don't think we ever really determined how they reproduce. We threw out a lot of ideas, and we're sitting down and considering them and thinking. I don't think we really locked that in. But you know what? That could be a fundamental part of this society, right? I mean, reproduction is fundamental for propagating our own species, our own culture. You can grow rice and things in a water area swamp. Yes, there's grains and some, as you talked about, Babacus, some special swamp grasses and things of the like. Look, this is a fictional environment. We can create what we'd like. I mean, we can give it a firm, like a realism base by using what we know about different plants that grow. I mean, they produce paper here because of the reeds. We have a papyrus thing going on. Or if these are, maybe they're sugar cane. And if that's the case, if they have a special drink, what if it's something like rum? The forest people don't have it, and the frontier people certainly don't have it. But if you're growing sugar cane, then you could make rum. You could have some very sweet tea that's made out of something. Or sugar beets, if you want to go in that route as well. Redcap, you're going to make a gumbo on Sunday? Ooh. and homemade chicken and dumplings the other night. Oh, y'all are making me super hungry. I'm definitely gonna have to get up and take a break here soon, and I'll go make a nice ghost pepper salsa con queso. Okay, enough food talk. My tummy's getting the rumblies. Yes, McGruber, me too. Oof, yeah, I'm hungry now. Oh, cranberries. Hey, that's true. We're just talking about it being kind of a bog. We can have a cranberry bog. If they have rum, they could make zombies. You're growing peppers. Oh. Yeah, so here, let's write this down. Agriculture. We could put ooh, those sound very hot. Agriculture, rice, okra, special custom swamp, whatever, collard greens. Oh, you know what? You know what can thrive in really sandy soil? Spinach. We can also talk reeds for sugar or making into paper, boats, thatching. There's probably also an aquaculture of harvesting turtles and fish. Frogs, snakes. Get some frog legs. It could be red cap. I mean, we could still talk about things that grow in colder, as you know, we're saying bog environments. These are just things that I am thinking grow in a swamp. And you know what? Let's throw it out there. And if we got to cut stuff back, let's cut stuff back. We could even go something like peppers for hot sauce. You know, we're talking about that. You know, think of Tabasco. You know, like cayenne. Mallow to make marshmallows, and maybe some other sweet drinks like sarsaparillas, or I'm sorry, sarsaparillers. If it ends in an A, it's ER, or depending, it's always plural for some reason, ERS. So if you have a sarsaparilla, you ask for a sarsaparillers. Oh yeah, oh that's right, Tamrick. Things like crawdads. Scotch bonnets. You know, I was out at BW3's earlier today, and I had their Caribbean jerk, which is pretty good. Oh, Old Port. You know, there's different spices too. Bergamot. Might be too cold for gators. We are talking about some glacial melt. You know, something like that. Oh, watercress. Oh my gosh, yes, watercress. Cattails. Organic corn dogs. They're already on the stick for you. Have we gone over fauna? No. So we have some agriculture. No, that's fine, Redcap. We needed to bust out of this and get into the fauna. You woke us up. You woke us up inside. You bid our blood to run before we came undone. You have saved us from the nothing we have become. This is my first year. This is my first year with the Crazies. My super actually saw my garden and was like, hey, look at all these pepper seeds I have. You want to grow them? Oh. Well, it could be. Or we can combine stuff. Oh, yeah, we could throw asparagus and some other things in there as well. You know, so if there's agriculture, we have some aquaculture. You know, we talked about various fish or crawdads or things that could be developed here as well. And then, you know, for the culture as well, what are some prominent things? Like, do they have a bunch of seagulls and pelicans? Because this is coastal. Do they, and you know, how do the birds play into this? Do they have things like gators? These are all questions that we can ask and incorporate into the culture. Yeah, wild onions, various fungi. Yep. All right, I think we have a very good base. We can add to it. I don't want to cut off the brain supply here. Let's get up and take about a 10-minute break. And when we come back, I have a nice, juicy, blank, pre-stretched, double-primed canvas that's slick, wet, and ready to go. And let's draw a more detailed map, maybe of just this area, or we can just zoom in on the majority of the swamp, or kind of offset it, like maybe focus on the circle, and have primarily this island, our central capital island, and then maybe two of our floaters here, as they're kind of circling around. I've played so much D&D, but I now crave 40k. But neither of my friends I play with are available. My life is an empty void. Well, Victor, have patience. You'll get there. They'll either come around, or you can try and outreaching and make some new friends who want to play Dark Heresy or War and Glory, I think is what it has evolved into. That would be great. I definitely agree, McGruber. All right, anyway, let's take a little bit of a break and come back and let's draw. Let's talk about the culture still. You know, what do they hunt? How do they conduct war? Let's bring these people to life. And let's give them a culture. Because as a dungeon master, if we're familiar with how life generally works, then we can make a lot of improvisation calls. Improvisation! When our player characters inevitably end up in the swamp. You know, are these folk, do they not take kindly to them's what don't take kindly? Or are they welcoming and full of hospitality? Is it dependent on the island? Is there some sort of ritual? Does every island actually have a totem pole? What if, I mean, I don't know the scale necessarily. You know, if this is fixed, what if for some reason the totem poles somehow tether islands, almost like a central anchor? Or at times they are, like if an island is drifting or they want to pull in an island, maybe they can, if not through the totem poles, then I'm just thinking, you know, what happens if there's an island collision, right? That would be a natural disaster in this swamp, as everyone's floating on these masses of reeds and trees and just swamp muck. And I mean, I don't think we can call it Spanish moss, but you get the idea, that kind of stuff. Peat moss. We talked about cranberries. Maybe there's a cranberry, you know, more in the northern area here with the cold, fresh water coming down. That kind of a thing. But anyway, yeah, 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll keep on trooping, everyone. Keep on trooping.